today we are going to start a two-part conversation on documenting processes using the process tools. So just as a quick reminder, how you get the place where you go to document a process is called the process tools page. And you can get there by going through the 4 functions and then selecting one of your processes. When you select it, it takes you to this view, which is where you document the process. You can also get to this screen. Can everyone hear me? Someone's saying there's a problem with the audio. If you can hear me, just type into the chat log you can hear me. Hello, hello.
Hello?
Oh, great. I can hear you. All right, so I'm assuming everyone can hear me. I'm going to look and see. Yes, great. Cool. All right, so what the second place or place that you go to get to the, click to unmute. For some reason I'm hearing other people, which is odd. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can solve that. There we go. When I don't make sure everyone's phones are muted, then we get background noise, but I think I just took care of that. Okay, so second place you can go to get to the process tools page is here through the org chart. So once you've gotten to that place where you've built your job descriptions, you've linked all the processes here from the 4 functions list to these boxes here on the chart, then you can select any box on the chart and then select the process from that job description, and it takes you again here to the process tools page. When you're on the process tools page, just by the way, you can see where this process is. You can see it here from this little breadcrumb trail. I see that it's in the getting the business function, in the advertising sub-function. And then if I click this, called link to job description, I can see all the job descriptions that it's been linked to. So everything in orange has this process has been linked to it. From this link to the job description feature, I can also link it and unlink it. So I can click this, and it just removed it from salesperson. If I wanted to add it back or add it to another position, I just select it. It's asking me strategic or tactical, and then I hit link. So from this screen called the process tools page, you can see where the process is on the 4 functions, and you can also see which job descriptions it's been linked to right here. So first, I just want to talk about some of the general functionality of the process tools page, and then we're going to talk specifically about how to build work plans and checklists. Next week, we're going to finish up the process tools page by going through the rest of the other tools and talking about how to use those. When you select a process, the first thing you're going to see is this screen here in the middle. And this is called the details of the process. So from this screen, if I can edit a process just by clicking it. And now I can edit the title. So this is the title of the process. When I selected it, it opens it for me to edit. Underneath the title is what we call the objective field, and that's this field here. The objective is meant to define the purpose of the process. So why does it exist? What's going to be in it? It oftentimes can start with like an ensure that. Sometimes people like to do something a little more casual, and they can put like how to generate referrals. What a good rule of thumb here, though, is to have it be a sentence or a phrase. Don't write a paragraph of information describing the process or describing the details of the process. If you start to get that elaborate with it, what you're really doing is documenting the steps of it, which belong over here in a work plan or another tool. So define the process with this objective field. Have it be high level. So what is this process here to do? These objectives are good to fill out as soon as you've actually created the process. So you put in the process title and the 4 functions, you go right to it, and then define it in the objective. And the reason that's important is you want to kind of decide what the scope of the process is going to be. What's going to be inside of this? What do you want to have happen when somebody looks at this process? And then that will help you when you go to document the work plans or whatever tools you're going to use, because you can understand kind of where it starts and where it ends. Right underneath the objective field here, there's this box that says process documentation completed. I went over this in the 4 key functions webinar, but I'll just remind people. If I fill this box out or click it, it's going to, TouchStone will turn the process title black. So if we go back here to the 4 functions, you'll see this is now black. So it's just a sign to everyone who looks at it that this process has been done. It's finished. It's completed. You can uncheck a process too. Even though you've marked it as complete, you can decide it's not complete. And then TouchStone will turn it black back to blue. Also, right underneath this process documentation completed field, there's this box that says, allows you to put the process in the public folder. So the public folder is this screen over here on the home screen where you can put processes that you want to be company-wide. You want them to be company-wide information. So when you put them in the public folder, they display here on the home screen. Going back up here to the top, I'm just going to go over this navigation here for a minute. The link to job description, you saw that. That just allows you to link a process to a job description or unlink it or see which processes have been linked to what job description so far. This is the archive, and I'm going to show everyone the archive features here in a second when we get into work plans. But this is where you go to view what's in your archive. So if you've archived a tool, you've saved a version of it, if I click View Archive, and then I would choose the tool that I had archived, and then I would see everything that was in the archive with the date that it was archived. From this view, you can go and restore these archive versions or view them. This next toolbar item over is where you view what you've deleted. So when you delete something, you delete a tool from the Process Tools page. It doesn't actually delete it forever. It really just puts it into this folder called View Deleted. And it's like a trash bin like you would have on your computer. So if you accidentally delete something, then you can still go and recover it. Create users are really the only ones who can delete things. I'm sorry, administrative users are the only ones who can delete things. So that's here in account administration when you set up your users to TouchStone. When you make someone an administrator, that gives them access to everything. And if they have access to everything, they can also delete. Any other user below that, create user, edit, or read only, can't delete. Okay. When I'm on one of these other toolbar items, like the archive or the view deleted, if I go back right here where it says edit process details, it's going to take me back to the beginning, to the title of the process itself. Okay, so let's talk about the tools. So over here to the left, we have all these templates that you have available to document with. The first one here at the top is called a work plan. And a work plan is really just a step-by-step set of instructions or tasks. Second tool down is called a checklist. And this is used for quality control. It's when you want to have verification that the steps have been done. You use a checklist. Next tool down here is called a script. So a script is for documenting a conversation. So anytime there's a verbal interaction, frequently asked questions, some kind of situation that happens that needs to be dealt with verbally, then you can build a script. This tool is called Uploaded Files, and the Uploaded Files tool allows you to upload documents to the process. So anything that's Word, Excel, PowerPoint, or PDF. You can take those documents and upload them directly to the process. Next tool is called the Form tool, and this is kind of like a blank Word document. Once you build one, you can see you can build tables like this one, or you can type text directly into it. And it works kind of like a blank Word document. You can insert images like you could in Word, you can type out a letter, or you can build a form like this one. This is our newest tool. It's called the Custom Form tool. And it allows you to build little web forms. So this is different from this form tool. This form tool is more creative, like it's like a blank Word document that you can build anything in. Whereas this form tool gives you these specific fields that you can create: short answer, paragraph, multiple choice, checkbox, drop down, and you can build little web forms that can be used inside of TouchStone. Next tool is called a policy note, and this is just simply that. It's a template that you can use to create a policy for the process. So you create a rule, a standard, a guideline that people need to follow, and you really enforce it, or you make it obvious by putting it into this kind of formal policy template. Then we have video and audio, last two tools. So these tools are for training purposes mostly. If the process lends itself to a visual representation or audio, just an MP3 file, then record that or do a screen capture video of it. If someone could follow the work plan, go through the steps of the process and record themselves saying it and doing it, make a video out of it and use that in the tool. And it creates a visual for the process, not just written. And then audio, same thing down here, except for it's a flat audio file. So those are all the tools, all the templates we have available. Probably 80% of the time, or maybe less, it depends on what kind of business you have, you're going to use the work plans mostly or exclusively. So every process in the end should have a work plan, because the work plan is the step-by-step, lots of detail, thorough explanation of how the work is done. That's what it means by documenting it. You create the steps of it. And the work plan template's at the top because that's the one you should always start with, and all of your processes will have one. The other tools, checklists, scripts, and so on, are as needed. So if the process would benefit from having a quality control checklist, then use the checklist. If it needs a script because there's verbal interaction, then use a script. If it needs a file or a form, so think about, what are the needs of the process, what tools would be useful, and then use those tools or not. It just depends on how, how thoroughly or what you need to document it with. So let's talk about work plans specifically. So to build a work plan, you click the work plan title, and then I'm going to put in the name of the work plan. Then I would define it normally. So this again is the purpose, and then you hit create. So easy as that. So now you'll see I've got 3 work plans in this process. This one we just created and these other 2 that were already there. You want to think about the work plan as being a result that happens step by step. If there are more than one result or workflow or thing that happens within the process, then you'll have multiple work plans. So this is one of the trickier things about defining your processes. You want to consider, are there multiple things that happen within this process? Do I need multiple workflows? And if the answer is yes, then create multiple work plans. So here's an example of that. This is the referral development process. We create referrals through alliances and then also through clients. So that's a situation where there are 2 ways or 2 workflows, 2 ways that you generate referrals. The way you do it from alliances is way different from the way that you do it from clients. So you need 2 separate work plans, but they're both inside this process called referral development. I'll give you another quick example. So I'm going over here to running the business. Here's the accounts payable process. So this process is, inside of it is everything related to how you pay bills. So it's going to have multiple work plans within it. How you pay bills with checks, how you do special invoices, how do you make credit card payments, check payments, bank deposits. So everything related to how you pay bills, all these workflows are here, and they're delineated with multiple work plans. There's not necessarily a perfect answer for this, like when do I need another work plan, or how do I know if I have multiple work plans? The best advice I can give you is just think, are there multiple things that happen within it, multiple beginnings and endings? You'll know you need a separate work plan when you get to the end of one set of actions and then you're stepping into a whole nother set of actions. They seem related to still the same inside the same process, but it's a whole different set of actions. Well, then that would be an example of using multiple work plans. Another thing to consider is that when you link a process to a job description or to a box on the chart, you're linking the whole process. You can't link separate work plans. So I couldn't link this work plan to one box on the chart and then this one to another. I have to link the whole process. So if you have a process that has multiple work plans in it and they're done by different employees, different people, different boxes on the org chart, then that might be a reason to create them as separate processes rather than keeping them all in one process. So like in this example, if I had an outside salesperson who only developed referrals from strategic alliances, then I might want to create a referral process called Referral Development Alliances and then link that whole process to the outside salesperson's job description. And then the inside salesperson generates them from clients, so they would have another process. But if I have one salesperson or both of those types of salespeople, inside and outside, both did alliances and clients, well, then that would be a reason to keep it together and have multiple work plans and just link the whole process. If you ever need any advice on this, if you're struggling more specifically with a certain situation you have, then go to the Help Center up here in the Resource Center and just send us a message about it. Just describe it. Be like, I have this example with this process. What do you think? And then we'll give you our 2 cents on it. So I'm clicking back on this work plan that we just created. If you decide that your process only is going to have one work plan, that's it. There's only one workflow, one set of tasks, then typically the title of the process would be the same as the first work plan, and the objective would be the same as well. So this process is called referral development. If I was only going to have one work plan, I would just call the first work plan referral development. There's no reason to kind of struggle for a different name. If there's just one set of tasks, one thing that happens, then name it the same. Name the title the same as the work plan. Okay. So to build a work plan, after you've created it, you just start by adding a task. So you click Add Task, click open the task field, and then this is task 1. And then you'd save it, and then I go add a task again, and then this is task 2. So the best way to think through your tasks is to try to do it linear. Think of the steps. First step, second step, third step. Try to think of the actions as they flow together. If it helps you to think about where it starts and where it ends, then I could create a task and call this, this is the end. And then I save it. So the first task is the beginning, and then this is the end. And then I can fill in. So I add the task, so this is the second thing that happens, and then I just drag it up and make it the second thing. So I always have the end here. So that's a technique that can work if the process is really step-by-step driven, so it really has a clear beginning and a clear end. If this helps you, then use this technique. Sometimes you just need to think and do it as you do the work as you're actually documenting it. So what is the first thing that I do? Okay, and you type it out, hit save, and then think, what is the second thing? Do it, and then type it out, hit save. Once you've added a task, if you want to edit that task, you just click it. So it's all click to edit at that point. And then this opens up and I can change this task. This toolbar is very similar to Microsoft Word. These functions are, what you're probably used to seeing in most word processing that you're using. If you're cutting and pasting information in from Word, so if you've got your documentation in a Word format, you're trying to get it into TouchStone, I'd suggest that you paste it in as text. And you can do like a right click and do this paste as text. Chrome lets you do that. Or you can use this toolbar item where it pastes as text. The reason that you would do that is TouchStone, the font and the font size is 10-point Arial. When you print it, it prints at 12-point, which is what we're both all used to, but the browser itself is 10-point Arial. So if you start cutting and pasting in other font sizes and font types, then your documentation is going to look different. The text is going to be different. So it's just easier to cut it in as flat text, and then it looks the same. It's all 10-point Arial. If you've got a task that has multiple parts to it, so this is task 1, and you're calling it, the thing, but then there's multiple things, you can use this bullet function. And so this is the sub thing. Do with bullets rather than writing it out in paragraphs of information. So this is about kind of breaking it up and thinking it in short, clear, specific steps whenever possible. So rather than writing out in these long paragraphs describing something, try to break it into bullets and sub-bullets. So here I can even, using this little indent button, I can do a sub-bullet. It's easier for people to see it and read it when it's like this rather than in a paragraph. The work plan, as well as the other tools, most of them have hyperlink tools within them, and that's what this little link tool is. So if I want to create a link, I highlight the link word, and then I go to this hyperlink tool, and then TouchStone pulls up the link types, hit the drop down here, and these are all the different link types that you have available in TouchStone. The first is called an external link. So this would be if you wanted to link to another website or another web page. So if I click this, I type in the whole URL of what I want to link to, and then I hit insert. If you're linking to other websites or web pages, you might have noticed that you can cut and paste the link in directly to the task right here, which is fine, but what it just looks a little messy. So if I'm just going to cancel this, if I go up here to Google, say, let's go to this screen, and I copy this URL, close this, and then I go back here and I paste in this URL, it just looks a little, there's a lot. Another way to do it is to do it through the external link. So I click here, I hit the external link, I paste in the URL, and then I hit insert. And then when I save it, you see this is a nice little link to that as opposed to doing it like this. So if you have some of this going on, it's pretty easy to fix. You just click it, cut this out, and then paste it back in with the hyperlink tool. The other link types are all things that are inside of TouchStone. So external link is things that are outside of TouchStone, another website, another web page, another web tool for that matter. If you have another web tool you're using, as long as you're through your own password, username and password screen, it'll go right to, TouchStone will go right to that, whatever screen you're referring to. You can also link to Google Docs in the same fashion. These other types are things that are inside of TouchStone. So here you could link to a job description if you want to refer to a job description in a process or a position. Here's where you would link to a whole process, a whole nother process. So if I click process and I hit the drop down, these are all my processes in TouchStone so far in alphabetical order. So I choose the process I'm referencing, and then I hit insert, and then TouchStone will create a link to that. You can also link to other tools. So instead of linking to a whole process, if you were referring to a specific work plan, or you were referring to a checklist that has to be filled out during that step of the process or the step of the work plan. It's the same idea. You choose what you want to link to and then hit insert. You'll see a drop down. Here's all the checklists. Find your checklist, hit insert, and then once you save it, then the link will go right to where you clicked. So use the hyperlink tool when you want to reference something else inside of TouchStone or outside of TouchStone. When you want to reference something else inside of TouchStone itself, usually it's information that someone needs to have that lives somewhere else inside of TouchStone. So think about those connections. Think about those connections between your processes. It's easy to consider when you're looking at just one process itself, because I could say, okay, here in the Alliance work plan, someone needs to fill out the checklist in task 2. So I create a link to the checklist. Or you need to make a phone call when you're generating alliances, and so in the 4th task of the work plan, you pick up the phone and make the phone call and you use the script. So referencing the tools inside of the same process is easy to consider because you can kind of see those clearly. What's harder is when you're thinking, what other information does someone need to have to complete the task that they're on? Or is it useful to show where one process ends and another one begins? Or is there critical steps inside of a process and a whole nother function that are essential to completing referrals? So think about those relationships and build links where you can see those opportunities. There's also an image uploader inside of the work plan and a lot of the other tools. So this image uploader allows you to take pictures, PNG files, GIF files, JPEG files, and upload them to the tasks. Pictures are fantastic. They're just a great way to represent how to do things when it's possible. There's a cool tool that I use that I may have already talked about, but I'll just talk about it again. It's called Jing, and it's this little sun icon I'm showing you right here. This is a free tool that you can download from the internet for free. It's made by Symantec, I think. It's the free version of, they have a larger, kind of more robust snipping and recording tool, but Jing is their free version. So with Jing, I like it because I just hit capture right there. I can take very succinct pictures. Like I could do a picture of just this. And so this is my picture right here. And then I hit capture image, and then here's the picture. And then I can go and draw arrows on it if I want. This little arrow icon. You can do text boxes. So here I can, and I made it kind of small for everyone to see probably, but I can type in little text boxes there. You can highlight things with different colors even. Here's the different colors. You can highlight little arrows. So it's much nicer than what you would have in your Windows operating system, or I think even if you have a Mac, it's the same thing. It's like a little snipping tool which takes images, but they're a little sloppier than this. So this is a kind of a cool way to take images. And then I usually save these because you need to save them to upload them. And I usually save them all as Jing, and then I'll throw them onto my desktop and save them. And then when I do another one, I overwrite the last one that I did. So here, if I go to upload the image, choose file, I know they're on my desktop. I just type in Jing right here, and I hit open, and then it's there. Then the next time I do an image, I just save it as Jing again, and it just overwrites that original image. In our fall release, I'm pretty sure we're going to have drag and drop images, which will be nice, where you can just take it and drag it right into the space, or cut and paste it, which is nice too. When you have an image in TouchStone, you can also resize it. So see what I'm doing? I'm just pulling it in and pulling it out. Once you get too big with it, it's going to start to look degraded, or even if you take it big and then do it small, the same thing might happen. But if you take it at a general size, then you can drag it in and drag it out. And then once you save it, then there's the image. So this cool tool called Jing you can use to make fancy screenshot images. Clearly, you can take images with your phones, any kind of a camera, download them to the computer, put them up into TouchStone. Anytime you can show a picture, again, of how something's supposed to look, it's fabulous for documentation. You can put, as you see the word second right here, but you can put text around an image. So I can put it at the top or the bottom of an image, just kind of saying what the image is. All right. All the tasks can be reordered too. I think you saw me do that, but I'm just dragging them up and dragging them down to kind of reorder them. Underneath the task section, there's this second section in the work plan called expectations. So an expectation is just a standard or a quality that you want to describe. The tasks are the to-dos, 1, 2, 3, 4, the steps, the actions. Generally, they can start with an action word. They're describing a step. Expectations are more just qualities or things you expect, things that are important to know. So after you've documented the tasks of the work plan, then think, are there any expectations? Sometimes expectations can be like how somebody goes the extra mile with something. How do they do it in an extraordinary way? What are the little extra things that they would think about or do to make it that much better? Sometimes you'll have work plans where all they are is just a set of things you need to know. This can happen. It could be an informational work plan or an informational process, which doesn't really have clear step-by-steps, but it's more just a list of qualities or a list of expectations, a list of things people need to know. And if that's the case, you can put everything into the expectations. You can add them and then leave the task section blank if you choose. So let's talk here for a second about what makes a good work plan. So these are just some things that I think are good to think about when you're documenting in general, and specifically a work plan. Use the hyperlinks whenever you find you can do that. So here's an example of that. Down here, there's a training video. So maybe I have the first task of this work plan, watch the training video, or here is the training video. People will see it when they're in the process. They'll see it down here, but the work plan can reference it just so someone doesn't necessarily need to go through every tool. They can go to that first work plan and they'll see how every tool is used just by reading the work plan. So here, watch training video. Here's another example. Schedule the program introduction. Well, this is a file inside of this process, or a form. So I'm just referring to it here. When you're writing tasks, write in an outline format. So number 4 right here is an outline format. This is a narrative format, number 3 here. So this right here is the same text as right here. This is done in a paragraph or narrative format, and this is done in an outline. But you can see the difference, right? If I'm studying this and trying to see the step-by-step I take, know what to do, be able to say, well, what do I do after this point? I have to read through this. I have to scroll with my eye through all of these sentences to try to figure it out. Whereas if it's like this, I can easily see, this is what I'm doing. I need to prepare for the program introduction. Things I'm going to need are all bullet pointed here, more target market description information here. I can see the links even better because they're not kind of buried in the text. This style, some people come to it naturally and other people it's harder for. So if you think in pictures and you tend to be a story writer, then you're going to gravitate towards this more. And you'll need to stop yourself and say, no, I need to break it into steps, because clearly when someone's learning, it's easier for them to see it in this kind of outline format. You also want to create consistency throughout your documentation. So if you have one employee who's writing things like this and another who's doing them this way, well, this is clearly different. So decide, I mean, my vote would be the outline for all the reasons I've said, but the bigger point is let's have it all look the same, have it kind of read the same. If you have a work plan where it's got a lot of if-thens in it, so there are some consistent tasks that happen over and over, but then you get to a situation where, well, what if this goes down and then I got to go this way, or if this happens then I have to do this. Don't let that throw you, because a lot of times people will run across that and they'll think to themselves, well, I just can't document this because it's so variable. It just happens so different every time. It's not happening different every time. What's happening is that you've got some if-thens in the situation. And you may not be able to cover all of the if-thens, but I'll bet you can get 80% of them. And that's way better than throwing your hands up and saying, well, this can't be documented. So write out the if-thens in tasks like this. If this happens, then do that. Take these steps. If that happens, then do this. Put them into separate tasks. When someone gets to it, if they're not having that situation, then they move on to the next task. But if they are, then they see the if-then. Here's an example of a few screenshots here, screenshot images that you can put in. If you're referencing like another software tool, you can point to that. You can take a little snippet of it and say, log in here. Here's an example of one process, a hyperlink to another process. So if I enter leads into the CRM in this particular work plan, I can create, rather than repeating the steps on how to enter leads into the CRM, I just create a link to the process or the work plan called entering leads into the CRM. When I click here, it takes me to this process on how to enter leads. There may be 10 other processes or work plans where someone needs to enter leads into the CRM. And what you don't want to do is repeat the steps of how to do that over and over again inside of 10 different processes. So think about, does something need to be a separate process? So in this example, it clearly does. If I started entering the tasks of this, I would try to think to myself, well, does this happen in other situations, this entering leads into the CRM? If the answer is yes, then add that as a process and make a link to it from this task to that. Here's another example of a hyperlink. So we have a CRM, and if I want to say, go to the CRM contact screen, if I click this, it's taking me, this is our CRM. And I was already logged in through my username and password screen, but it's taking me to a whole other web tool called Infusionsoft, which is our CRM. I can also click on this link and open it in a second window. So that's an option you have too if you want it to, rather than, it'll automatically just go right to it, but if you right click and go open in a second window, then it will. All right. Here's a few examples of types of expectations. So some expectations are around timing. When does it happen? Due by the first day of every month, due by the end of the month. Subjective things to consider, qualities, standards, when, why. Some of the best work plans I've seen have expectations which give the employee the why it's done this way speech, which is, it's fabulous, because a lot of times when employees don't follow processes, it's not necessarily they're just being insubordinate or they don't care. It's more like they don't really get why it's important. Why are you making me fill out this checklist? Or why do I have to do this step this way? Or why do I have to follow this overall? If you can build some explanations for that people hear in training, then it's going to stick with them, and they understand the why of it. All right, so that's work plans. Let's talk about checklists next. So if you have a work plan, let's go like to this one, you can use this button up here called Convert to Checklist, which will take a work plan and turn it into a checklist. So you'll see here, I've got my work plan still here, and then down here I've got this checklist I just created. Now these are now independent of each other. I could delete this here and it goes away, but my work plan's still there. So once you've created a checklist out of a work plan, it's easy to, you can change either one of these and they don't affect each other. You can't turn a checklist into a work plan, though. It only works the other way. You can only take a work plan and turn it into a checklist. So the checklist tool is for quality control, and you can build a checklist just like we did the work plans by clicking the title, putting in the name, hitting create, and then you build it just like you did the work plans. Or like we just did, you can take an existing work plan, and with the checklist box up here, you can convert it into a checklist. So either way, the reason we have that convert feature is a lot of times all the checklist is the work plan, the steps of the work plan that someone needs to check off as they do it. So if you've decided that this process needs quality control, it needs verification that the steps have been done, then use a checklist. But think it through thoroughly, and think it through all the way to the end, which is the management of the checklist. So you don't just want to create checklists just because it sounds like a good idea. They really need to have a purpose. Either the purpose is that the process needs evidence that the steps have been done for you to refer back to later, for a manager to use later, for the employee to use to remind themselves what they did or what they didn't do. Or the process is so sensitive and essential that you need tracking of it. So if that's the case, then by all means have a checklist, but be willing to manage the checklist. So what I mean by that is somebody needs to be looking at them. You can't just require employees to fill out a checklist and just have it be this busy work that no one ever uses or looks at. The minute the manager stops looking at them and stops commenting on them, or even saying, where is yours from last week, or I noticed you didn't have it, or thanks for doing them, that's the very moment that the employees are going to stop caring about them and they're just not going to do them anymore. So decide on the value of the checklist. Is it valuable enough to have someone reviewing it and looking at them? Checklists are great management tools. Managers struggle all the time to understand if the work is getting done without there being a fire emergency. A lot of times we don't know the work wasn't done until there's an emergency or a fire that happens because of it, and then we know you didn't do it. So to be able to manage effectively without being a micromanager, without being an absent manager, is to have tools that allow you to see that the work is getting done. So checklists are fantastic for that. These little custom forms are fantastic for that. Tally sheets, anything like that, where at the end of the day or the end of the week, the manager can say, here's what got done, in roughly speaking. So this helps this managing from afar and keeping track of employees without having to, be knocking on the door or without being a firefighter running around just fixing problems. So the checklist tool, I'm just going to go through how to add checklist items here if it's not obvious. So same as the task, click Add Checklist Item, and then up comes the title field and then the description field. So the title is the text that's going to go next to the box. This is going to be bolded and at the top. The description is any extra details that you want to have. So if you want to say anything more about how this step is done, then you can put it in this details section, and then I hit save. So, and this is how it appears. I'm just going to drag this to the top so you can see it. So this is the text field right next to the box, and then this is the objective field underneath. You'll notice in this one I don't have an objective field, so you see description in gray here. I can add it just by clicking it. Now it's available for me to add. But if you don't want the objectives, then you just leave them blank. But you will see, when it won't print this way when you print it, but you will see this little description. Checklist should be short and simple. It should be clear, easy steps. If you've got a lot of explanation in the description field, then I would suggest that you're putting too much detail in the checklist. The detail of how to do something, the details of the steps belong in the work plan. The checklist is just a reminder. Do this, do that, do the next thing. And people go check, check, check as they do them. It's not meant to be this full-on description that someone has to read and study every time they do it. That'll make it a little too overwhelming and not a great quality control. So if you convert a checklist, a work plan into a checklist, you might consider getting rid of some of the details and then just having the main thing that they do that they're checking off. I want to go over these toolbar items here, and then in the last 5 minutes that we have, I'm going to show you how to use checklists here in the control panel. So this toolbar item you're going to see on every process tool. This allows you to move a process tool out of one process into another. So when I click on this and hit the drop down, I'm looking for the process that I want to move this checklist into. So I've decided for whatever reason this checklist is in the wrong process and needs to be in another one. So I'm looking at the sub-functions right now. I find the process I want to move this one into, and then I hit save. And now that checklist is gone from this process, and it's now in that other process. So this toolbar item allows you to move process tools out of one process into another. This is the export arrow, which you're now seeing all over TouchStone. When I click on this, I see just the export features. I can print directly to my printer, export to Word, to a PDF or email. This work plan that's behind me right here. So when you click any tool, when you're on that tool and you hit this export arrow, it's going to take that specific tool and print it or export it. This next toolbar item over is the archive feature. So up here is where you can view what's in the archive, but this is how you archive. So if you have a work plan, for example, that you want to change, or you want to ask an employee to change it, but you don't want to forget what it used to look like. You want to keep a version of it. There's a lot of industries out there where this kind of compliance is mandatory for certain certifications or licenses that you have. You have to show versioning of your documentation, not all of it, but some of it. So that's a reason to use the archive, which you probably already know about. But in businesses that don't deal with that, being able to see the evolution of your processes is useful. How have they changed? How can you make them better? What did they used to look like? So if I want to archive something, what I would do is go and take the title, and I call this version 1, or whatever you want to call it. You can even give it a number. I don't think the numbering is all that useful because in TouchStone you find it by the title, not by the number. And then I'd save this. And so now I've just edited the title of this one. And then I'd go and archive it. I just click to this button here. I say OK. And now TouchStone's taken a copy of that and moved it into the archive. And then I'd go click this and get rid of this version 1, because this is the version that I'm going to change. This is the one that's still in my system right here. So then I edit this and change it in any way that I need to. If I want to go back and see what it used to look like or see that version, I go View Archive, hit the drop down here, go to the work plan, because that's what I archived, and then here it is. So it's showing the title. It just has this version 1. Now you don't need to do this because you can always see the date. That always tells you when it was archived. If I click on this, I can view it and just look at it. But if I want to restore it, I hit this little restore button, and then you'll see it throws it back into the archive, into live TouchStone right here. So use this archive feature when something's going to change. I'll give you a little tip, but be careful with it, and I'll tell you why. Archiving something and then restoring it is a way to get a copy of something. So now these two work plans here are the same right now. If you want a copy of something, this is a way to do it. Now, we don't make a tool that allows you to copy work plans or any tools, and the reason is we don't want you to have duplicates of things. It just gets really confusing and bad if you're making duplicates of your work plans in all different places. For whatever reason you would do that, now you've got duplicates. And one of the values of TouchStone is there are no duplicates. It is the most current version. There are no copies. So if you're going to make a duplicate, you might want to do that if maybe 5 tasks of one work plan. You want to get those for some reason because you're going to morph those into something else. So this is a way to do it. You can make a copy, and then you can go and change the title of this, and then you can keep some of the images maybe or tasks that you wanted from that particular work plan. The black X here is delete. So if I click this and then I say OK, then that work plan is now gone. It is, though, still here. So again, if you accidentally delete something, you can go up and view it in the View Deleted and restore it. So let's talk here quickly in the 2 minutes that we have just about using checklists. And I'll go through this with every tool starting next week, how to use it in the control panel. So the Process Tools page is where we built it, where we created it. Here in the control panel is where it's used. So if I go here to this control panel I have assigned, and I go to the referral process, which is right here, I see this checklist that I created. So if you wanted an employee to fill this out in TouchStone, even on a mobile device, and store it back to TouchStone, keep it in TouchStone, they could call up the checklist, and then they go and fill out the steps as they do them. They can save it as something, put in notes. The minute they save it, TouchStone automatically date and time stamps it right here in this completed field. It can be printed from here as well. And when I go back here to the control panel, I can view that checklist right here in this completed folder. So there's this checklist I just saved. And I can go back to it just by hitting go and see this same checklist. If it was the second day and I needed to complete the checklist again, I would just hit the title again. And here's the checklist. Fill it out again, save it back to TouchStone. You can also run reports, or managers can run reports of the checklists that their employees are doing. So this goes to my point about a manager reviewing checklists. So if I go to management review here, it takes literally just a few steps to say, hey, I wonder what Mary's been doing. Did she do her checklist? Click, I can see everything that she's done. So just the manager looking at it and saying, did they do it this week? You can also search, date range and week. Boom, there they all are. I count them up. Somebody's missing one. So it's easy to review it through if they're doing them in TouchStone. Having said all this, everything exports, like I showed you, checklists, all of it. So if you'd rather have a printed version of it, it's easy to get that as well.